start out by we only have it's a tight half hour, guys. A lot of content to get through in the next half hour. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of who we have today, and then we're going to jump right into our topics, okay? So welcome to the Future Proof of Gaming, future-proofing your game with game services. We're super excited to talk to you guys a little bit about engagement, monetization, and just ultimately what are the services that our games are using today to ensure that they have the longevity that's kind of required in the shift in industry with the fact that our games are with us a really long time these days. So with that said, I'm going to do a little bit of intros of who we have. We have Kristen Cox, who comes to us from Xbox Publishing. Thank you. Thank you for the round of applause for Kristen. We have CJ Williams, who is our partner and head of product for PlayFab and Game Creator Services. And we have Ada Dewan, who is our GM of Growth Partnerships at Mojang. And then I'm Brady Wood. So I work on CJ's team, and I drive product strategy for Game Creator Services and PlayFab. Awesome. Well, I'm going to... Yeah, please come in, Timmy. We're super excited to chat with you guys today, and so I want to kick it off by laying a little base, Kristen. And so talk to us a little bit about what's happening in the industry. We're seeing that there's a 30% increase in revenue opportunities for game creators that are able to really unlock engagement and monetization. We're also seeing the length of games going on a lot longer with our customers. And so what are the challenges that are really introduced by this, knowing that the top 100 games are really enabling live ops strategies? And so what's happening in the developer mentality?
Yeah, I think for developers, it's really that expectations have changed quite a bit from players. They really do expect when you launch a game that they're going to be able to continue to engage with it over and over again, that there's going to be more opportunities for them to have fun in that space, that they're going to be able to come back to it again and again and again if they enjoy it and they have a community around it. And for developers, that creates a situation where we're really moving from a time when many developers thought about sort of charging towards launch. Like, how do I get it really perfect so that I can have something amazing that I press a gold master and get it out into the world, to instead thinking about all of their games and their tools and their backend pipeline have to really sustain, and they have to be able to continually put more content into their game, continually make updates into their game, continually engage with their community. And they're really having to plan that out quite early in the development process, because if you just sort of build the way that you've traditionally been building, if you are coming from that mentality of making a box product, you're going to have a really hard time then taking that sort of approach to development where you spent probably 4 to 5 years making the content you're going to launch with, and then try to say, now I'm going to try to do a bunch more content really, really fast.
Right. So we're looking at games that are with our players a lot longer, having to respond to that player feedback on a more regular basis. And so when we think about the services that developers are using that enable that shift in mentality, CJ, how does that affect what your team is looking to build?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The first thing that we look at is platform ubiquity, right? Because so many of our developers, they want to basically enable their players to play wherever they want, progress wherever they want, chat with whoever they want, and monetize on every platform. And so the base of all the services that we build are really such that you can use them on every single platform. So, whether it's Xbox or Nintendo or PlayStation or iOS or Android, we want our services to be available everywhere. And then when we look at it, it's the type of services that enable them to build these great experiences. And so, there's things like monetization. And for monetization, you need a catalog, you need an inventory, you need to be able to connect to all of the stores. But it's even more than that, because you need all the data that's coming in to help you really understand what your players want. And that's, as Christian said, that's a big change in how games are being made, is because the first game is launched based off of what the game developer has decided, and the designers and that kind of stuff. But then you want to adapt to your players. And that's really the data that's coming in. So being able to provide a rich set of data back to the developer so that they can understand how the player is playing the game, where they want to play, what features they want, and kind of iterate on it.
So it's like this increased fluidity that we're seeing between the initial launch and then how that you respond to that gameplay, and then we're basically able to customize more actions in the player experience. And so, Kristen, when we say that top 100 games are enabling live ops, how important is it to look at that live ops strategy, where in the dev process, and what part should it play in the dev process?
I really believe live ops is an entire development philosophy. If you want your game to last for a long time, you need to build it that way from the ground up. I mean, getting all the way into nitty gritty when we talk about like, hey, the entire way you're going to do content architecture, you should be thinking like, how is this scalable? How is this, not going to be too reliant? You don't want to be too brittle where like all your systems are built on top of each other. If you need to make a change to one, it's going to, everything's going to fall over. And those questions start getting answered in like engine selection. They start getting answered in how are we really like going to organize all of our content. So quite early. And then also in the design process, you want to be thinking, like if I want players to be playing this for 1,000 hours, if I want them to be playing it over the course of 3-4 years, how am I actually going to accomplish that? Like what in our gameplay loop, what in our design is actually motivating that, and like how are we going to deliver for players and give them what they want?
Totally. Well, and in that gameplay loop, CJ, talk to us a little bit. I know PlayFab's making a bunch of announcements at GDC this year with some new releases. And so before we get to Ada, and I want to talk a little bit about engagement strategies and that extensive amount of content, Ada, but before we get there, tell me a little bit about how PlayFab thinks about that playing loop and the ability to respond to it. And are there any things that we can rely on PlayFab to sort of provide that benefit to developers?
Yeah, it's a great question. Really at the heart of PlayFab is this service called PlayStream, which is this action loop. So PlayStream enables events to come in, data from the player, and then you can do a whole set of actions on it, be it emailing the player or changing the game design based off of it, executing cloud script, and basically any function you want. But also being able to take that in and apply it to things like economy or segmentation, where you adapt the game to the player. And so that's really what we look at overall from a PlayFab perspective, is how do we bring that whole design loop into the service so that your game can be very dynamic, right? As Kristen said, if you design it from the ground up in this way, you're designing your game so that it's adapting to the surface and basically what data we're getting from
and driving that retention, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so in this responding to players and adjusting the expectation of gameplay, Kristen, you touched on it lightly, which is like there's this huge expectation of more content robust. And so some games are looking at user-generated content to do this. And so, Ada, I know obviously this is at the heart of some of the things that Minecraft is doing. And so talk to us a little bit about that UGC aspect and how Minecraft's thinking about it, and give us sort of an origin story. We want to hear a little bit about how it's come to be what it is today.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about Minecraft, Marketplace Minecraft. And we started back in 2017, about 6 years ago, to launch a curated UGC marketplace. And back then, when we started, we had just over 20 creators, and we were manually ingesting and taking that piece of content through a certification process. And so today, we've grown significantly. There are over 36,000 pieces of unique content, which include custom skins, textures, and full worlds that really extend the experience for players with Minecraft. And we're seeing that engagement really fostered through engagement with Marketplace. We know that the vast majority of our 100 million monthly active players are engaging with Marketplace and really enjoying that. And it's really through our partnership with PlayFab that we've been able to scale and grow so quickly. We have Minecraft Marketplace on our Bedrock Minecraft, and for those less familiar, Bedrock is our flavor of Minecraft that is available on multiple platforms across mobile, console, and PC, and working with a service like PlayFab to be able to scale across multiple platforms has been critical to our business.
That's awesome. So when we think of Marketplace and we think about delivering what the user is looking for, what the player is looking for, you're really looking to enabling the community to kind of generate that pipeline of content, right? And so there's a bunch of challenges that come into play, like how do you rehydrate that back into the game? How do you ensure that they have the right assets and entitlements that exist in that space? And so have you seen those challenges? Like how tight has the partnership been between PlayFab and maybe CJ and Ada around trying to make sure that we're adjusting for that? And again, when we think of the scale of Minecraft, it's like, it's super highly scaled. So the aspect of needing to kind of survive through those challenges, I'm sure is big, right?
Absolutely. And so building on some of what CJ mentioned is working with PlayFab's like UGC Marketplace services and the live ops tools, we're able to actually gain insights into sort of what's working. We also leverage the inventory and catalog management, and that's been huge in terms of scale and scaling across multiple platforms, especially when many of these platforms have different processes for updates and different timelines, where mobile updates more frequently than other sort of platforms. And so working with PlayFab has really been able to help us manage that process much more easily.
That's awesome. And so PlayFab was purchased by Microsoft 5.5 years ago, essentially, right? And so now it sits inside of this larger organization where we have obviously over 20 first-party game studios. And so when we think of partnerships like the one with Minecraft, CJ, talk to us a little bit about the role that the first-party game studios play in your product pipeline, and then ultimately, what's the benefit that third-party developers can get from it, right?
Yeah. So we sit within an organization that's developer-focused in gaming, and so we, lots of different type of capabilities that we provide out to developers and game creator services. And so we were basically with Minecraft at the very beginning. So this has been a long journey for our announcement today around Economy GA. We last year at GDC announced our user-generated content service, which Minecraft also uses. But what it really helps us do is build these services from the ground up that we know for developers, right? We know that for this massive scale, we know that when you actually go to use and operate your games at this scale across lots of different platforms, that they actually work for the developer, right? Because a lot of times you can integrate a service within your code, you kind of get it up and running, and then you're like, great. Now you start to try to operate the game, right? And you try to use these tools. And this was, very close hand-in-hand collaboration between Ada's team and a lot of the Bedrock team and then the PlayFab team, and not just making sure the service scaled, but also making sure the service was really able to be operated at scale, right? And that's a big difference. If we can, support thousands of requests per second or, millions of users a month, that's great. But if you need a team that's massive to be able to support that kind of usage, it just doesn't work for the game creator. And so we learned, not just the operations side, or not just the kind of scale side from a magnitude, but also from what does it take for a game creator to operate the game. And that, same set of tools that Minecraft is using at their scale is what we're announcing today. And so all the same capabilities that Minecraft uses is available for third party to use across every platform that's supported.
And Kristen, when we think about services all up and how we support this shift in mentality to live ops and having live ops happening at the beginning of our development process, talk to me a little bit about sort of build versus buy and how we should be thinking about that in terms of services that can be provided to developers versus what you should go try to create net new and from scratch.
I'm a little biased here. I've built back-end services at two companies, and I never want to do it again. I totally understand. There is real trade-offs there, between you really know your game, and you might be able to make something bespoke, but there's a lot of complexity these days, and CJ touched on one really big one, which is that going multi-platform, which is something almost everyone's going to want to do, is really hard. Yeah. And having to build all of that yourself and be able to be compliant with everybody, be able to simultaneously ship with everybody, and have that work for players they don't care what platform you're on. They're thinking well, I have my friend and I was playing on my mobile phone, and then I got home and I switched over to my PC, and I just think that should be seamless. So, you get a lot of benefit from picking up a service like PlayFab or any kind of these really well built third party services that they have a whole team that's really dedicated to making sure the services are running well, and you can take that and build on top of it, and not have to spend time sort of reinventing that wheel. So yeah. I don't understand the other side of it, right? I've built the back end before, but also I think that pain of building the back end before makes me think a lot of that stuff, especially now in the world we live in, platform and cloud, is something that you're going to benefit a lot by going to a service that's up and robust and
Well, and speed to market, right? Because what we're saying is that the game loop is now an iterative process, and we're developing updates and new content to players all over the world after launch, right? So that speed to market to launch is key.
Yeah.
So if you can save some time and speed to market by using a shelf solution that gets you 80% of the way there, and you add the 20% that's custom to your game, it's a lot of opportunity, I think, to see that efficiencies of scale. And I know as part of the PlayFab team, like one of the things I'm most excited about is that when we bring it to a third-party market, it's already been tested at scale inside our own house, right? So we have that opportunity to say, you can bet on us with your business, because at the end of the day, our first-party game studios are betting on us every day.
And I can add to that too, where in a world where there are limited resources, working with some PlayFab services allows our team within Minecraft to really focus on adding new features and things to the store. So it's been really helpful to actually work with PlayFab.
I have one last question, and then a heads up for the team. We're back here again tomorrow at the same time. I'm going to share a QR code in a minute where you can go and actually ask a question, submit a question. We're going to be back trying to answer your questions, as we know that this is a hot topic. And there's a lot of information that ultimately, like each of the experts on stage, hopefully can help you guys to solve the issues you're having with your games and talk through it a little bit. And so, warning that we won't do questions in this session, but we will be back here tomorrow to answer some questions. My last one is for CJ. So CJ, we've seen that Microsoft has made, I think it's like 15 AI announcements in the last 3 months. We've seen everything from ChatGPT to some of the announcements around Copilot, and we're seeing this transformation of making AI and ML accessible, easy to use, and quick to see the results. And so talk to me a little bit about how this is playing into the developer services that your team wants to build.
Yeah, so actually today, one of the other announcements that we're doing is a churn detection model that's all ML based. And it's designed in such a way that you actually don't have to make any code changes to your game. So basically, it's with a click of a button in the PlayFab Game Manager, you can go in and get churn detection running automatically. And what this allows you to do is basically start to understand, within your player base, what players are likely to churn. How it works is it's integrated with our segmentation service. So you get, segments of players that are either likely to churn, and middle likely to churn, and then not likely to churn at all. And you can start to build experiences for them. And of course, when you think about like user-generated content service or a monetization service, that's a lot of what you can use to help, keep that player there. We know a lot of times after they've made their first purchase, they're much more likely to stay. And so, if you can understand what players are likely to churn and help them make that first purchase or make that next purchase by a discount and just changing the user flow, it can really help drive this engagement and keep those players that were so kind of costly to get into your game in the first place, right? Because, of course, the most expensive player is the one that you've acquired and then they decide to go play another game. And so this is kind of the start of our journey down this. And that's where, our overall goal as a team is to, we like to say, you make it fun, we make it run, right? So we want to make it very easy for you to pick up these very advanced services. So like we've done with Minecraft, taking that power, making it available to every game developer. And we'll start to do that with more and more around the ML and AI space. But we think churn is a great one to start with because it's so critical for this kind of engagement and monetization. And the goal of this was to make it, as simple as a click of a button. So I think it's, you click the button and then 2 days later after you start to look, you now have your segment of users that are likely to churn, and you can design, loops in your game to help retain them. And so it's, it's really important because, having great services will make your game good to start with. But it's this data loop that's so critical to understand how your players are playing, keep them engaged, keep them monetizing, keep them retained, which is what this is kind of the first step down that journey.
And then, Kristen, do you think that trend will continue as we look at developer services? Are we going to see more of this focus on what are the tools that are that jumpstart to ML and trying to take data, the importance of game data? What do you see sort of the importance of game data playing in over time? Obviously, it's very important in a live ops mentality, but I'm curious sort of how you see it from your perspective.
Yeah, I think we've been on a journey with data for the last, years. And a lot of where the challenges have been, you've got really good at collecting data. Like, that's not really the challenge anymore. Like, we can collect a lot of data. What we're not as good at, or what people struggle with, is making meaningful use of that data.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about the churn prediction model. I remember, in the early days, basically writing bespoke, heuristic-based algorithms, testing them for 2 months, and then coming back and like, well, did that work? Okay, now test another one for another 3 months. Did that work? Because it is hard. Like, it's easy to collect data. It's hard to get insights out of data. And I think that you're going to see more and more help making that jump from not just collecting data to actually using data in a way that's really meaningful, using newer AI techniques that are starting to come online.
Ada, how are you seeing sort of the role of data over time when you're growing that creator community? Like what's the sort of the identity that Minecraft is approaching that mentality around data and understanding the player base?
Yeah, we definitely use a lot of data. And I'd say, Kristen, what you said really resonates. I think it's critical to how we continue to iterate and improve on what we're able to offer. And we do a lot of A/B testing as well within our store. So I would say the information that we get back from PlayFab plays a critical role into actually determining, what changes we would make, what new features we want to add. So absolutely, we see that as critical.
It's all about like getting that signal back. But again, it also really resonated what you said, Kristen, which is like trying to understand what action to take against that data is exceptionally difficult. And it's an art. It's an art that's going to grow over time. Even here at the show, we've spent some time with one of our partners at Databricks, who's talking a little bit about democratizing sort of how you get those deep insights. And so, CJ, maybe you can land us a little bit about what that team is doing and kind of like how we at Xbox and ultimately in our game creator services team are thinking about that sort of deep insight play.
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that PlayFab so well.
You lost your mic. Hang on. I'm going to move your mic up. Sorry. There you go.
That is so powerful is that we have these set of services that have a tremendous amount of data about what the players are doing. And so we send all of that back as standard telemetry. And so one of the features we announced earlier this year is what we call data connections. And so we provide some data capabilities within PlayFab, which we think are very powerful. But we also know creators, like Minecraft was one of the advocates for this feature, also have tremendous data teams and want to be able to take that data and pair it with other things. Whether they be data that they're getting from within their store, or whether they're getting from other user experiences they have. And so now with data connections, you can push that data into Databricks and use the full power of Databricks to analyze that data. And if you go to the booth that they have, they show a demo where basically they're using the Unreal demo game. They've integrated PlayFab, and within just minutes they can have a new Databricks cluster up and running. They can ingest all the data. They can transform it in such a way that it's very easy to analyze, and then they can start applying their own auto AI capabilities onto it. And so one of the things that we do as PlayFab is we want to not only provide a lot of capabilities, but also let you pick and choose which pieces you want. And so if you want to use every feature that PlayFab has, we'd love it. But if you have your own data backend already and you just want to integrate a few PlayFab services, you can do that. Bring the data out that we generate and then combine it with other data and produce even more insights. And so it's really that kind of flexibility that we want to enable, particularly around the data space, because it's so critical. And then you can push that back in. So one of the things that you can do is you can generate segments in Databricks, and then PlayFab has APIs where you can now take those segments, push it back into PlayFab, and take actions on them. So it really completes that end-to-end loop of how you gather data, understand what that data is telling you, understand the knowledge you can gain from it, and then take action based on it.
Well, and ultimately, like the power of data we really see is in the data estate, right? It's not just in the gameplay. It's from all the other listening systems you're getting from all the other places you're interacting with your community of players, right? So it's not only happening in the game. The game is a key component to understanding how to adapt and adjust and grow. But the opportunity with Databricks, and even with Power BI inside Microsoft, it's like you have the opportunity to create this data estate. Then you can build dashboards that allow you to combine multiple listening systems to really drive those deep insights, right? Because one piece of it is how players are behaving in the game, but equally as important is understanding how the community is or is not behaving inside your game so that you can try to make those adjustments around it. But the truth is the data is hard. It's hard. It's complicated. And Kristen, you did a great job of explaining it. It's just like, we've gotten really good at saying data's important, data's hard, we got to collect all the data. But the hard part is knowing what to do with the data, how to segment the data, how to define what the great player segments should be. And so one of the things that I know we're really focused on, and I'm biased as it's under my part of the product vertical, but we're really focused on trying to put the tools, the quick start tools, back into the hands of developers so you get the value of that data faster. We want to see high value return on investment for the work that we're putting in place. And so I want to get all the data, but I need to know that I can be delivered the value of that data iteratively and quickly, right? And so this is a thing that I think we're really focused on over the next 6 months to land supporting the community, even so far as trying to say you can build the dashboards and share amongst your community of developers how we get to a place where those deep insights are possible, because we know that we see it everywhere as everyone looks to gaming to understand engagement. Everyone looks to gaming to understand gameplay and what it will look like as we gamify literally everything. And so the challenge and the opportunity is, I think, to put those tools in a quick start way that we can really start to unlock that value quickly. And then that then plays into my live ops strategy. It plays into my UGC and understanding how to find my community. And ultimately, when we have ML and churn, like the things we're releasing this week, we're starting that process of simplifying the power of your data in a way that can drive value to the devs immediately so that you can stay focused on making it fun, right? And that ultimately we can provide those deep insights to show you what your community thinks is fun. And so it's a place that I think as a community of game creators, we're coming together to say we've solved some of the challenges, but some of those actions against those opportunities we haven't yet perfected. And so that's a place that I'm excited for us to keep investing in and again, getting feedback. So selfishly, I'll say we are announcing Economy is in GA. So all the work that we've done with Ada's team is now available to third-party creators. And so go check it out. I'll move forward so you guys can see our QR code. So you can submit questions through this QR code. You can also submit your email address to stay up to date on all the PlayPad information as we release new information about our product. So Economy is in GA officially today. So we're so excited. We're excited to take the learnings from Minecraft and really bring that to the third-party developers and make that possible. The other thing we're super excited for is that Churn is in public preview. And so we're actually making an offer that you can use Churn for a month free of charge. So check it out, go in and sample through it. As CJ said, it's no code. So all you have to do is be using PlayFab, run segmentation for a couple of days, and we'll start to tell you the players that we think might churn. And you can start to see that power, that data working in favor of you so that we can work smarter, not harder together. So thank you guys, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for questions.